Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy. How are you, love?
Kia ora, Pat. I am good.
Very, very, very busy night tonight. Lots going on. What we have in the YouTube and various platforms write-up, we will do. There are a couple of new things we may throw in there as well. And we're not even having a look at the One News poll, Chewy. There was a One News poll today with, of course, Mikey Sherman, who I like, who we're continually talking about. They still have a mandate to keep being government. It's like, yeah, they got that in October and they've got that until the next election. It's like this poll hasn't done that. Long story short, National up a couple, Labour down 1. Oh, the grand slide is back. I think the Greens down 1. Everyone else the same. It's like, okay. Fair enough. I did look at it and think, should we do that? But there's actually so much other better stuff out there.
Like we said it before, man, polls this far out,
yeah.
Who the fuck gives a shit? It means fucking nothing.
Yeah. But look, other than that, there's a lot going on with Christopher Luxon. There's Farm Act stuff. There's ferry stuff. There's Winston Peters. There's the New Zealand Herald suggesting there might be cracks in the coalition. I don't think they mean that they're all cracked, because I think that would be accurate if they said that.
Crackers?
But, yeah, they're crackers and they're cookers. But, you know, I think that's just the Herald grabbing a headline because Winston said no to something, which apparently they're entitled to do, and everyone's all happy about it. So other bits and pieces in there as well. But I've got to say, I actually really think that the best and biggest news story of the night, well, it's not a news story. The thing that's going to be best on the show tonight is the conversation I've had with Deputy Welsh Language Commissioner Osian, ready for this? Llywelyn. I probably got that wrong. He taught me twice during the thing how to say his surname. Us mere mortals would say Llywelyn. No, that's not how you pronounce it. And obviously if they're speaking about the Welsh language, they want to get it right, is what they want to do.
Funny that.
Yeah. So the reason, I'll get into that in a second, because first of all, I just want to remind you guys, if you aren't already, you could choose maybe, I guess, to be a bit of a patron at patreon.com if you want to support the work we're doing. Patreon.com/Big Hero News. And actually, you can see right there the interview that I did at 11 p.m. last night, which was 10 a.m. in Wales time, has been up there for 5 hours. There's been some people looking at it. There's been some people commenting on it. And apart from that, I mean, the main reason most people become patrons is to support what we're doing. There are some little bonuses and fun things along the way as well, including this weekend we will have a meetup online. If you'd like to come to that, you need to be a paying patron. That is patreon.com/Big Hero News to support what we are doing. So anyway, lots to talk about tonight. We're actually going to start tonight with the conversation with the Deputy Commissioner of the what is the official title? Deputy Welsh Language Commissioner. Yeah, got it. Now, this is all sparked out of a conversation that we've been having for a few months now about how this government has come in and they have demoted our indigenous language to at best second place. They've come in, and even though some people will say, well, no, they're still English and Māori, it's together, from what was happening with Māori, it's certainly taken a step backwards. Now, Osian and people like him around the world who are trying to push their, now get this right, their minority indigenous languages, right? New Zealand Māori, a minority indigenous language. They're trying to grow them. They're trying to get more people speaking it. They have an active target within government to have more Welsh speakers by 20, I think it's either 40 or 50. And it feels like our government is doing the opposite. And we talked about this the other day, and I'll rephrase what I said the other day. my ponderance was, it's funny how it feels like all of those places around the world that have been colonized, that have people with more melanin in their skin as the indigenous people, those countries, New Zealand, Australia, USA, those countries seem to be the one where there's quite a big sector of the voting bloc that goes, don't make me speak that fucking language. And I was wondering out loud, Chewy, if places where the indigenous people have less melanin, you could say are white, if there's the same kind of pushback. Now, it was a bit of it off the top of the dome. We'll throw it out there and see what the situation is, because if we find through our investigation that the countries with a minority indigenous language who are white, there's cross-party support, and the countries whose indigenous language comes from a population who are not white, all pushback, that leads me to some conclusions there, Chewy. Now, I've already thrown that conclusion out there as a possibility, and this is now the process of us investigating that. Just so you know, we're speaking to Wales, to the Welsh Language Commissioner tonight. I have sent emails off to Ireland. I've sent emails off to Scotland, and I'm doing the research, because it's pretty clear to me that if the one difference between the countries where the minority indigenous language is spoken by white people and the minority indigenous language is spoken by brown people, if that's the only difference, it's pretty clear what it's all about. So this is the start of our investigation officially. Chewy, you want to say anything before we rip into it?
I've said on the show multiple times, I love looking at language and how it develops and that sort of thing. And then there's the ugly side of it, of colonialism or just the suppression of a language from a place. It's always been a tool of empire building, I guess.
Yeah.
And now throughout the world, you see a big pushback from places that have been colonized. And we are talking Wales, and we are talking Scotland, and we are talking Ireland, and we are talking North America, and we're talking here, and that sort of thing. And I think it's interesting to examine what the similarities are and what the differences are.
Yeah.
But I find it fascinating when you look at these countries and the similarities between their arguments of, the classic one is like, why are we bothering bringing back Welsh? What? It's not an international language, but that's not the only metric to measure something's worth. Is whether you can use it in business or whether you can parachute into the middle of China and use it. People quantify these things really weirdly. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this interview.
Look, I'm going to be pretty arrogant here, and I'm going to tell you this is going to be the most important piece of media you can see this week. Might not be the highest profile, might not be the most reactionary, might not be the biggest headline getting. In fact, normally when we put whole interviews up on YouTube, they don't rate very well. When we put a clip up there on Luxon talking about ferries, it goes through the roof. But I suggest to you, if you are someone who cares about this, and when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about things like being a buffer, what Professor Margaret Mutu talked to us about. If you're some of those people, this could well be the most important conversation of the week for you, because I felt like there's a lot of problems with the internet at this man's house. I don't want to say in Wales, that would be racist. And so there are several cuts through it. The cuts are purely him dropping out or him going, sorry, could you just repeat that question? And me just taking it out and keeping on going. So you might see a few edits in there, but there's no content that's been taken out. It's just literally bringing it together from the places where his internet failed. Yeah. And I got to the end of it and I was like, oh, it was a bit stilted. How did that go? But then I edited it today and I was like, yeah, this is pretty dope. I'm enjoying this one. Cool. And don't freak out because I'm wearing different clothes. I know I try and normally match the interview clothes with the live clothes, but I recorded this last night at 11 p.m. Let's have a listen to this conversation and we'll see you in about 15, 20 minutes. Very happy to welcome to the show the Deputy Welsh Language Commissioner and Director of Regulations, Osian Llywelyn. Now, before we start, Osian, educate me in how to pronounce your surname correctly.
You would pronounce it Llywelyn. So the double L at the beginning of their name would be a as opposed to a L.
Llywelyn. Is that it? Llywelyn.
That's right. That's right.
It's fascinating,
Fabulous.
because you have that kind of indigenous way of pronouncing things here in New Zealand. Obviously, Māori is our indigenous language, and the WH can be an F sound, and unless you're a native speaker, you have no idea. And being a non-native speaker trying to pick up like an indigenous language from the other side of the world is difficult at best. But look, thank you so much for joining me this morning, your time. I'm really interested to find out about how other countries, I don't know if treats their indigenous language, but interacts with, legislates around even their indigenous language, especially if it's a minority language, as we have in New Zealand. What percentage of people in Wales are fluent in Welsh?
Okay, I think there's that's a question that I would answer in two different ways. We have a census, which is published every 10 years, and the last census was published in 2021, and the number of people who identified themselves as Welsh speakers as part of that census was just under 18% of the country. However, that is a self-assessment process in terms of the census, and we also have an annual population survey, and there is the latest results in that population survey back in September of last year, September of 2023. That survey estimated that around 29% of people aged 3 years or over were able to speak Welsh. So there are some discrepancies in terms of the statistics, but I think generally we are looking at around the 20% mark of people who identify as Welsh speakers.
Is the discrepancy between the 18% to the 29%, is that maybe people who use Welsh often and commonly, but maybe aren't fluent? Like, so here in New Zealand, most people use Māori day-to-day language. Like, everyone speaks it, but only maybe 5% are fluent. Could that be the differential between the 19 and the 29?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think there are discrepancies and there are differences in the way that people report their use of the Welsh language, and that can be influenced, I guess, by various factors. That includes, the context in which the question is asked. Sometimes the way that those questions are asked from in terms of the census and other surveys differ, and that will inevitably trigger slightly different responses from people. The perceived importance of the language for individuals, and obviously the way that people identify, I guess, with Welsh culture. Those are, various factors that I guess that can influence that discrepancy.
Gotcha. Now, the Welsh Language Commission has a website, and what I noticed on the website is the Freedom to Use Welsh section. For people who are listening to the audio podcast, it says, if you wish to communicate in Welsh, e.g. when speaking or writing with another individual, you should be able to do so without interference. And it lists a few examples of doing that. That says to me that perhaps there's been a resurgence, a revival of the Welsh language over the last 100 years. Has this been something that Wales has lost and has had to try and find and build back up to where you are today? Or has it always been around at sort of 20-30% of people spoke it?
Well, I guess you referred to the provision there around the freedom to use the Welsh language, and that's certainly a key feature of our current legislation that the Commissioner operates under. That's the Welsh language measure that was passed back in 2011, and that replaced previous pieces of legislation and we've gradually built on existing legislation. We had a piece of legislation back in 1993. The previous Welsh Language Act after that was 1967. So there has been a strengthening of Welsh language requirements in terms of what public bodies are expected to do in terms of delivering services through the medium of Welsh. And obviously the culmination in 2011 the Welsh language measure not only established that principle, that legislative principle that people have the freedom to communicate with others in Wales through the medium of Welsh, but it also established the Welsh language as an official language, and it has official status in Welsh, therefore.
Is this idea of growing, building, making the Welsh language sort of being able to be used legally, I guess you'd say, a right to use it, is it a political football? Like, are there parties that are sort of English first or think that Welsh is a dead or dying language? Or is everyone in agreement in the kind of Welsh political world?
I think in any democracy there are a range of views. I think certainly from our Senedd, our Welsh Parliament, there is a cross-party consensus in terms of the government's aims to in its strategy for the Welsh language to increase the number of Welsh speakers to a million by 2050, and to increase the daily use of the language. The government has a target to double that from 10% to 20% of the population using Welsh on a daily basis by 2050. And I think, as I said, there is a cross-party consensus and broad support to those aims.
So by cross-party, you mean both what some people would describe as either on the left or the right. They're all in agreement and generally with what Wales is trying to do.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think there's a cross-party consensus to the aims and how we go about that. There may be some different views around various policy areas in relation to the language, but as I say, I think the broad aim of increasing the number of people in Wales who are able to use the language, and that we take proactive steps to increase not only the opportunities that people have to use the Welsh language, whether that's through services with public organisations, but also importantly increasing the daily use of that language here in Wales.
By daily use, is that what I was referring to earlier, that how we use Māori here in New Zealand by just interspersing it? It's almost like a mix of Māori and English. It just gets interspersed with, and everyone kind of uses it, well, most people intersperses Māori words with English. Is that what you mean by daily use, or are you saying fluent speakers daily use?
Well, I think education is a central function to the government's broad aim of reaching a million speakers, and what the government here in Wales wants to see is the education system, people who leave statutory education, that they leave as confident Welsh speakers. Now, there are levels of confidence, but certainly what the government wants is that people are able to feel confidently to use the Welsh language, and that they do that on a daily basis. Now, that will vary from cohort to cohort, but what we want to see is people leaving statutory education as confident Welsh speakers.
Is this the feeling? And I've got you guys had a conference recently in 2024 of the International Association of Language Commissioners. Is this the same sort of objective? Is this the same sort of drive that we're looking on the site now of places in Canada or in Spain or in Kosovo? Et cetera, et cetera. Ireland's there as well. In fact, Canada's there numerous times. That's interesting. Is it the same kind of feeling you get from all of those same language commissioners? There's a drive to make people use the native language more, and they want to see the use of native language grow more?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, the International Association of Language Commissioners was a really important development, and it's allowed us language commissioners who work, albeit in different contexts, but have ultimately the same aim, which is to promote and facilitate and celebrate the use of our minority and native languages and official languages in our respective countries. It's been a real important development, and it's given us the opportunity to learn from each other, from our own experiences. As I say, we all work in slightly different contexts, whether that's culturally or legislatively. Clearly we have a strong Welsh language piece of legislation which imposes duties on public bodies to deliver services through the medium of Welsh, and the the conference that we had earlier this month, that was the 8th conference that the association has held. That was in Cardiff. It was an opportunity for us to demonstrate and to show how those legislative changes in the last 10 to 15 years has really transformed that agenda in terms of the opportunities that people have to use the language when accessing public services, when using the language in the workplace, for example, but also more broadly in communities across Wales.
As I peruse the members of that association, I noticed New Zealand's not there. Any ideas why that we're not a part of that? Is it on our end that we just haven't signed up, or?
I think it would be wonderful to see representation from New Zealand on our Association of Language Commissioners. We very much welcome new members, whether those are observing members or otherwise. So the more the merrier, and we'd very much welcome representation from your country as part of that association.
I think it's amazing that we've been talking for 10 minutes or so now, a man from Wales and a man from New Zealand, and we haven't talked about rugby once, especially because the All Blacks were just announced today, but we won't go there because I was thinking Cardiff. This made me think about that. If I'm walking through Cardiff and I'm seeing street signs, road signs, school signs, hospital signs, am I seeing Welsh? Am I seeing English? Am I seeing both? How does it work?
You would see both languages on any signs that are displayed publicly, and that is the responsibility of government, local authorities, local health boards. You mentioned schools and education there. There is a statutory legal requirement on any signs that are displayed in public to be bilingual, with an emphasis on the Welsh language appearing first on those signs.
So that's a literal Welsh language first policy as opposed to the reverse.
There is a requirement on public bodies when putting signs up, new signs, and replacing old signs, that those signs have the Welsh language appearing first. But they are bilingual signs. And
sorry to make an absolutely pedantic question. Because this is what's happening in New Zealand a little bit at the moment, the font between the English and the Welsh, is it exactly the same? Is Welsh, it needs to be a bit bigger than the English? Does it make any difference?
No, I think the regulations that we have in place, which places these legal duties on public bodies, they stipulate that when you do produce bilingual signs, that the Welsh language should be treated no less favourably than the English language, and that's in terms of font size, etc. So they are equal in that sense.
Is this conversation kind of a bit weird to you? Because the reason I'm asking these questions is we've had a government that's come in recently who is doing the opposite. They're literally saying English first on signs. They're renaming some of our government institutions to have the English name first. And that's why I'm, as a podcaster and journalist, kind of going, is it just us? Is it just this political party? Or is this what's happening around the world? Which is why I'm wanting to speak to guys like you. What would happen in Wales if a political party, ardently stood up and said, English will be first, English will have priority on road signs in government departments? Would that get traction amongst society or not?
No, I don't think that's the case. As I said, in any democracy, there will be a wide range of views. But I think, broadly speaking, I think the people of Wales are supportive of the Welsh language and the ambitions and the aims of government, but also other key stakeholders who have a keen interest in the Welsh language, most notably ourselves as the Welsh Language Commissioner. There is broad support for the promotion of the Welsh language, and bilingual signs and things like that are key features of that agenda.
I know this is probably, someone comes to New Zealand, they go, oh, where's Lord of the Rings? And it gets really tiring after a while. And I'm sure this is the same for you guys, but I love watching Welcome to Wrexham on whatever channel it's on. And the explanation, like they talk about The Welsh word for the corner store, the English word is the corner store, the American word is the 7-Eleven. I love that. And I think that's just, and I know that's not to do with legislation or anything, but just to see that, it fills me with kind of, oh, that's such a nice way to show how the culture that they're showing through on that docuseries is actually unique to that country. And it's one of the things within that country that you'll only get in that country. So why wouldn't you want to highlight it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, I have to confess that I haven't seen the Welcome to Wrexham series. As a Swansea City fan, another club in Wales, my interest in Wrexham is perhaps not as high as those in North Wales. But it's a fantastic platform, isn't it? And Wrexham, we had a visit from Taylor Swift to Cardiff last week. She was performing in the Principality Stadium here in Cardiff and used the Welsh language to converse with the audience, and those sorts of things are real positives in our efforts to promote the language and to mainstream the language and to make it a living language. And I'm conscious of the efforts that Wrexham Football Club are doing to actively promote the language in their own communities as well, but also on platforms like Netflix, that brings the language to a significantly wider audience, doesn't it?
Definitely. Hey, as your involvement with the Association of Language Commissioners, which means you get a chance to peruse the world on some level when it comes to indigenous languages, native languages in different countries, do you have any opinion on why it feels like places like Australia, USA, and New Zealand, there is a vibe, there is an underground vibe which has enough popularity that it can be put into legislation through a political aspect as to wanting to literally squash and suppress our native languages? Do you have any thoughts around that? Have you seen anything that could explain that?
Oh, that's a difficult question and perhaps a slightly political one. I certainly think, we here in Wales are part of a broader United Kingdom, and clearly English is the dominant language, sure, if you like. And I mentioned earlier some of the journey that we've been on in terms of legislation. The current legislation we have from 2011, previous pieces of legislation which aimed to address and redress perhaps some of the historical consequences as to why the Welsh language was indeed a minority language and spoken by, we saw continuous decrease in the use of the Welsh language over the course of history. So there has been, sustained efforts from governments both at a UK level and post-devolution here in Wales to redress that, and as I say, to promote and facilitate the use of the Welsh language. We've seen a huge rise in Welsh medium education, for example. There are requirements on local authorities to proactively promote Welsh medium education amongst their citizens. We've got a Welsh language education bill that is going to be laid in front of our Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, later this summer, and we hope that will become law by the end of 2026. So there are steps taken by government, certainly here in Wales, over the course of the last 50 years to strengthen Welsh language requirements, impose duties on public bodies, but also that broader agenda of promoting and facilitating the use of the language and making that language certainly a more visible one here in Wales, which again is a response, I guess, to our history as a nation.
I had one other question, but just that you've just said that, it makes me think, what does it add to a country to actually embrace its indigenous language?
Well, I think the people of Wales, we recognise that we are a bilingual nation. We are a nation, we're a bilingual nation, but there are other languages that are spoken in Wales, but there are 2 official languages here in Wales, and it's important that we celebrate the language. The language is an inherent part of our nation's culture. And I think it's important that not only do we recognize that, in legal terms, but also in broader terms, but that we celebrate that. And I think, the work that the International Association of Language Commissioners, for example, do, we learn from our experiences in various jurisdictions, but it's also an opportunity for us to celebrate the successes in respective jurisdictions. So I think it's really important that we embrace our culture, that we celebrate it, and that we give people the opportunities to use that language.
Last question, if you will like to play a game with me. And the game is, imagine you've finished working for the Welsh Language Commissioner and you're now out consulting to other countries as to why they should embrace their indigenous languages. Here in New Zealand, we have a government at the moment who, it's not that they're not embracing it, but they're making sure that English comes first. What advice would you give to them in this split parallel multiverse as to why they should perhaps think about embracing our Māori language, or perhaps whatever country it is, their indigenous language, more heartily?
Well, I think, from our experience, look back to 2011, 15 years into this piece of legislation. And I think from our experience, we've seen a real step change in terms of the way that organisations deliver services through the medium of Welsh. And what that has meant is that the people here in Wales have more opportunities to use the Welsh language when they access services. They can see the Welsh language, whether that's on signs. They are able to access websites from public bodies. They are able to use the language in their everyday lives. And I think that's been we've seen a real step change in that sense. And as I said, I go back to the point I was making in response to your earlier question. I think it's really important that, any government reflects the culture and the values of that country, and language is an inherent part of that culture. So I think, it's important for any government to take proactive steps to promote minority official indigenous languages.
The Deputy Welsh Language Commissioner and Director of Regulations, Osian, help me again, because I'm going to say Llywelyn. Give me one more lesson before we wrap up.
Osian Llywelyn.
Llywelyn.
Fabulous.
Okay, that's okay.
Fantastic.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I've really, really appreciated your insights.
Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Oh, there we go. Buttons. Hi, Joey.
Hello. What a fascinating chat.
Yeah. I just, there's something about that I just went, yeah, this is where this is going to go. This is all right.
I think for me, it's always reinforcing that link that the culture you want to preserve is of course 100% attached to the language.
Yeah.
And when it's just like it is with Welsh, when it is so integral to the place where we live, how can we not promote it?
Yeah, it's the idea of what's unique to the country. Now, everyone has various traditions, but really, I mean, like I say this often, what I say is the only thing, and maybe people pick one or two other things like flora and fauna, but really the only thing that's native to New Zealand or unique to New Zealand is the Māori culture. And so to have a government, I mean, imagine if you went to Paris, right? And all the street signs were in English or something. Part of the immersion is in the culture of the day. And yes, our cultural identity is not 100% Māori, because we are not 100% Māori. But as I've always said, for me, I personally feel like even though I have no bloodline to the Māori culture, I feel like because I'm of New Zealand, I'm a New Zealander, the New Zealand story is part of my story. Innately, that means the Māori story is a part of my story. And I just think all this piss-assing around with government department names and English first and that kind of stuff, and it's just racist. I mean, look, I don't say that word very much, but it's steeped in racism. And I know I'm saying, imagine what they do in Ireland. We know what they're going to say. I knew that I'd never spoken to those guys in Wales before, but I knew that they were going to say cross-party support, the left and the right. Everyone supports it. Everyone wants to see it grow. It's real funny how the white majority countries don't want to speak that brown language, but if the indigenous language is also white, the white majority countries want to speak that white language. It's just, I just can't, I mean, I can't see it any other way. I really can't.
I mean, you mentioned Paris. You try and tell a French person that their language isn't that important. They'll gut you in the street. You know, the French, no, they're so rabid in protecting their language because it is the essence of their entire culture. And the flip side of that being that France is a colonial power. It was also absolutely vital to their colonies as well. So we keep on circling back to the same thing, that as much as these guys say, hey, look, it's just a silly little language and we don't need to worry about it. Language is so important. It is so integral to everything that you're trying to do. And I think a fear of pushing the boat out on this sort of stuff here is purely a colonial hang-up.
Yeah.
And it is a racist hang-up.
Yep.
And it is, you can say it's whether it is just pure innocent ignorance or whether it's more weaponized than that. Like, my head is not going to explode if we have bilingual signs. And you'll get all sorts of people, you know, when it's road signs, that you see the concern trolling, don't you? You're like, oh, what if people have an accent because they're too busy trying to read the trail and don't see the English because it's not at the top. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It just does not happen.
Vicky says something I hadn't heard about this. Here's another one then. Geez, today I saw that they're doing away with New Zealand Sign Language press conferences in Parliament soon. So in other words, we have 3 official languages. In fact, some people say English is not an official language, but we speak about 3 official languages: English, Māori, and New Zealand Sign Language. And they're pushing aside Māori. And if this is accurate, and I don't question it, they're pushing away sign language. It's like, okay, so you can't be more blatant. Just please the colonizing language, just English, please, nothing else. It's just so blatant. It's just, I don't know. It's just, and it's just pitching to that, you know, MAGA, make Aotearoa great again. But they'd never say Aotearoa, would they?
I have seen people tie themselves in knots over that because they so desperately want to use MAGA. But then they have to cave to get. It's not Aotearoa, it's New Zealand. It's so funny.
It's just
I laugh every time it happens.
So look, guys, I feel like that was a really valuable. You know, sometimes I'll be honest, broadcasters, they go, oh, you know, you should really share this one around, guys. You should really get it out there and really tell people about this one because they're looking up clicks and stuff. But I really feel it doesn't matter that we did it. It doesn't matter that it's associated. But that conversation is just, it's an external look into how a country should treat its indigenous language, no matter whether that indigenous language comes from brown people or white people, to actively say they have a target of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, I think he said, and straight away, you know, and this is why I asked the question: road signs, public signs, Welsh first, the indigenous language first, even though it's a minority language. So we are really, I mean, this, to be honest with you, I don't even care about us, but that conversation should be had on RNZ. Maybe I'll send some of the journalists there his contact, because that should be on RNZ, because it just speaks to what's behind what this government is doing. Because you could argue, all the same arguments fit. Oh, the majority of people in Wales don't speak Welsh, so it should be English first. It could be exactly the same argument, because that's what they're saying. They're saying because the majority of people don't speak Māori, it should be English first. Well, the majority of people don't speak Welsh, but it's still Welsh first. Wonder why that is. And anyway, I've also done about 5 or 6 little 90-second clips out of that already, and they'll be going out on my Twitter feed and stuff in the next few days. So if you're not already following me, you should definitely follow @PatBrittonin on Twitter, and then pass those clips around as well. All right, Joe, anything else?
Just to sort of dovetail out of this conversation, or slight pivot, on the movies at the moment, all in te reo.
Oh, cool. I went and saw Shakespeare all in te reo. It was amazing. I knew the play fairly well myself, but it's just amazing. I mean, does anyone complain about going to the opera and it's in Italian? Of course you fucking don't. Because it's how it's performed.
I do, because
you're at the opera?
A working class man and I don't understand the opera. And
or
opera
the ballet
is
if it's
just
in French.
Fancy musical, and you know how I feel about musicals.
Yeah.
But this film looks incredible.
Oh.
And if you hunt out the trailer, you'll see how they've done the subtitles as well. It's not just little text at the bottom of the screen. They've done it in a really, really interesting way. It looks like an amazing story. It's a New Zealand production. It's all in te reo. I don't know how many times I need to say how important this film is. Get out and have a look, because it's something that is unique to us.
Cool, man. Let's get through some of these chats and super chats that have been highlighted. This is from back in the start of the conversation. Mr. Arthurs tells us that crack now has a good meaning. One could say that Chewy is cracked at rants. There you go. So dope. Get down with your bad self. Kooky and Nick, I'm assuming that is a late fee. Person time late fee, $2. Thanks, Nick. On to conversations around what we've just seen. James says, does this increase a general feeling of pride of being Welsh? Thinking about this as it relates to New Zealand. Well, maybe, I think so. Maybe. I mean, it's what's unique. What's unique about Wales? And the language is one of the unique things. What's unique about New Zealand? Well, the spoken language, te reo Māori, is one of the unique things, along with a whole bunch of other Māori stuff and the flora and fauna. Because you think about it, the colonized culture here is basically the same as the colonized culture in Australia or in South Africa, or it's the same. Yeah, we have Christmas on the beach. Well, so do they in Australia. We play rugby really well. Well, so do they have in Wales. It's their national sport as well. The only thing when you start, we're number 8 wire and 4x2 mentality. Yeah, that just means you're explorers. I mean, many places around the country have that kind of idea of, get it fixed up. It's the only thing. And I'm yet to be challenged. You watch me be challenged now in the chat, left, right and centre. Ian says there are world views in a language. In French, 80 is said, whatever that is, quatre-vingts, which means 420s. Another view is awesome. Quatre-vingts.
Yeah, for people that aren't quite picking up that reference, how the French count is amazingly bizarre. It's well worth looking up. I can't even describe it. It's so crazy.
But just to talk about there is views, that's Italian, girl's name Nino, boy's name Nina, because A's are feminine and O's are masculine. So it's always Nino as a man, Nina as a woman, and that works with some of their words and stuff as well. So yeah, it's a way that you can start figuring out things to do with the words just because of the language and the rules that language adheres to. Jonathan says, thank you for the super chat, by the way, language is key to culture. Both supporters of te reo and their opponents understand this. This issue is about racism and precious white fear. One could say white fragility, which was a nice title going around the last kind of year or so. And Tawhiri says, Lord Ashburton, the town was named after him, wrote how he wanted Māori to be slaves like in the USA. He had thousands, and he was tasked with removing te reo. Yeah, so
that's a really good point. When you look at the early European arrivals here, the sealers and that, the very pointy end of the spear when they got to New Zealand, of course, they all spoke te reo.
Yeah.
They had to communicate with the locals.
Yeah.
They traded with them. They married. They settled. And that was the same for all the arrivals until we got that massive wave of colonization. And we could set up those European structures and we didn't need Māori anymore. And that's when it flipped. And so, yeah, it's just the circular argument that they'll go, it's not important, language isn't important, but then suddenly it really, really is important and it's vital because it's our language.
Yep. All right, we're going to move and we're going to go and have a look at some more of this. It's a strange thing, but the fallout from the Kiwi Rail ferry debacle, because today there's a couple of things from here. We're going to have a look at some of the comments from Christopher Luxon this morning on AM, but also the news tonight talked about that Christopher Luxon refused to rule out privatising the ferries. Really, what a surprise.
From train paying to ferries, Kiwi Rail has had its Kiwi fails, and the Prime Minister isn't ruling out setting the state asset adrift.
Are you at all open to the idea of privatising Kiwi Rail?
What I'm very focused on is making sure Kiwi Rail becomes a very high-performing organisation.
That's not what Christopher Luxon promised on the campaign.
No, asset sales is not something we're focused on or not interested in. Well, we've said asset sales is not a focus of us for us in this government.
Not a...
Just remember, when he's stuttering, he's lying.
Focus isn't a rule out. Coalition partner ACT wants Kiwi Rail retailed.
I think there's a serious question about should the government own a ferry company or a train company, or put more of its capital into schools and hospitals or roads that we desperately need.
I don't see any program and policy ever announced at this point.
Say again?
Is it either or? We can only do one and not the other.
Right. Yes.
Small
Fair.
little New Zealand can't handle more than one task at a time. We're so small and we're so stupid. We're just going to sell it all off to someone from overseas. So predictable.
Or roads that we desperately need.
I don't see any program and policy ever announced at this point in time in the Cabinet or in our policy discussion about privatisation.
As much of a dingus Winston Peters is, and that is the official term, if you're wondering, dingus, he is not a fan of privatisation. So coming up, it's like international house sales and stuff. Not a fan. Yeah. Certainly hasn't been historically. So he could be a real thorn in the side of privatisation should it go that path.
Ministers also wouldn't be drawn on the possibility of taking the Inter-Islander off Kiwi Rail.
We've got no current plans to do that, but we're working our way through the whole question of how you replace the ferries, and we're starting that discussion.
What you
don't have to
is you get in a time machine and you go back 6 months and you carry on with what was promised. We could have had. I was just thinking today, too. Imagine if it's 2026, right? And you're sitting on the same old tired ferries. And then it's 2028 and you're on the same old tired ferries. And it's 2034 and you're on the same old tired ferries, and you're going, we could have had new ferries 8 years ago. World leading, fit for purpose, amazing ferries 8 years ago if that bald blue guy hadn't got involved. You know? Shocking.
If you don't have a time machine, take a commercial flight to Korea and go, hello, hi, me again.
Yeah.
I'm a big, stupid fuckhead. And I need to do whatever degrading debasement I need to do to get our deal back. Please and thank you.
All right.
Discussion.
So you could, in theory, sort of outsource the Inter-Islander service?
Oh.
Is that on the table?
Hello.
Well, anything is possible.
That was a bit of a harsh zoom, wasn't it?
So you're going to sell off the Inter-Islander operations?
Advice coming, no decision to be made. Thank you.
In the wake of the Aotearoa's grounding, the government's refusing to say whether the penalty fees for breaking the old contract is more than the estimated $551 million for 2 new ferries.
They are commercial conversations. It's important that they are handled by commercial organisations negotiating those contracts.
Will it be cheaper and quicker than the one you can?
It'll be a much better deal, yes, and that includes being cheaper.
Kiwi Rail.
I love how she says it will be a much better deal, which they haven't yet started to investigate, and they have no idea what it's going to look. You know what? If we're being fair, maybe it will be a better deal, but you can't say it's going to be before you. I'm going to buy a car in 10 weeks' time, and it's going to be much better than the car I've got today. What do you think about buying? I haven't thought about that yet. I haven't got a clue what I'm going to buy, but it's going to be better. Fucking hell, man.
I tell you what, I do not have more belief that we're going to get some rusted out fucking shitbox that's been plying the skeleton coast of Africa, smells of old bananas and monkey piss. And they're going to give a coat of paint and say, look, we found a ferry. Everybody said we can't find a ferry. It's got 5 years left on it.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper.
Good Lord.
Always cheaper.
Self is also coming under fire for its recent hiring of global management consultants McKinsey & Company to do a strategic review.
NewSub understands the bill for that contract to spend was to the tune of about $8 million.
Isn't it to the tune of $8 million that we've been told?
I've been told that I'm not allowed to disclose that figure. The figure was astounding to me when I learned it. It was too much, and I've expressed that very directly to the board chair.
A week after she expressed her concern, the board chair stood down early.
So the others are going to could be losing their jobs as well.
That could be the case.
Kiwi Rail's decks could be cleared further.
It's amazing that she would even say that could be the case. Now you think about, TVNZ just lost a case on employment law because of the way they made people redundant. Speaking in front of cameras, there's no privilege there. She's not in the house. Speaking in front of cameras about they could be losing their jobs as well. I just kind of go, should this end up being an employment issue? And speaking like this in front of cameras, it just says again, Chewy, that phrase you love so much that they don't really know what they're doing. And it's just showing it once again.
That question that was asked in her reaction is one step down from screaming and turning into a cloud of bats. I have never seen someone shit their pantsuit so hard live on camera than Nicola Willis did when she was asked that question and realizes that her brain left her no way out. That was a lot of words trying to deny the fact that she was, with her whole body and soul, saying, yes, that's correct, we're fucked.
I want to play you some of the breakfast show, AM show, I should say, this morning. Basically, Lloyd and our hairless leader did a dance, went around and around and around and around, didn't get anywhere. And so I figure, Lloyd's about to be out of this job. He just went, fuck it, I'll just ask him.
Is 300 million the amount that it's going to cost to terminate that Hyundai deal? 300 million?
Again, not getting into that, Lloyd, because in fairness,
but
needs to be
this is
done as a
taxpayer
commercial
money.
negotiation.
I know, but this is taxpayer money.
Yeah, fully get it. Yep.
And this is your doing. You cancelled it.
$3.2 billion.
Is it 300 million bucks?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just say to you, Lloyd, I'm really pleased that we did cancel it, because when you've got good money going after a bad project, that's not great. And the braver call is to actually call time on it and say, I'm sorry, we're not spending $3.2 billion with massive infrastructure investments in the ports of Wellington.
Because the last thing you'd want is massive infrastructure upgrades and stuff, wouldn't you? I mean, that'd be the last thing you want, like making better ports and stuff that are fit for purpose and that are going to be protected against earthquakes. That's the last thing you'd want to do. What? I mean, I watch Alone and they just build their own jetties out of bamboo poles, and that's about all they need to do, Chewy.
As someone that lived in Wellington for the big Kaikoura shake, and parts of the ports of Wellington sank, and all of the old, we're all talking old wooden piles and shit like that. Do we not see the benefits that handing a big infrastructure upgrade project to a New Zealand company might be a good thing?
Yeah.
Do we not see the benefit of doing 50 to 100-year infrastructure build to two locations that are prone to earthquakes and are a vital transport link might have benefits outside of their just raw upfront costs? Do we not see that project will never, ever, ever be as cheap as it was at that moment of time?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you are adding the fact that we are paying a company taxpayer money to give us nothing in return. And they'll keep on going, oh, it's sunk cost fallacy, sunk cost fallacy. None of this would have been a sunk cost. It's not a question of us going with the highest bidder or us getting ripped off. It's shit that needs to happen.
I'm just reminded of the big hubbub around Kying order and this current government going on and on and on and on and on about $10 billion more worth of debt. But never once did they say that built the asset bank for New Zealand by $25 billion, right? Because, there was $10 billion worth of houses being built that are valued at $25 billion. So when they continually talk about the spend, they've never talked about what asset would that give us. If they have to spend billions of dollars or whatever it is on these wharfs or on this infrastructure, what are they then worth? Are they worth double that? Would this actually be a net positive in our ledger for the country? They've never talked about that. They've only talked about the cost, just like they did with Kāinga Ora houses. It's only about the $10 billion paid out, not about the $25 billion worth of assets that are now on the government ledger. And I wonder if it would be the same. I wonder. Hey, this has got about 15 seconds to go. We'll just get to the end of it, then we'll come back.
And picked them because to accommodate those new ships, which was a major problem. And the reality is that project had lost control. And so I'm better. I know it's a tougher decision, but I said to you, I'm not afraid to make tough decisions and sort of.
You're also not afraid to make dumb decisions, just quietly.
Out. We're sorting it out. We'll deal with it. We'll get a good response in the end, and make sure that the taxpayer's not on the hook for $3.2 billion and climbing.
So we won't be on the book for the hook, for $3.2 billion in climbing, but equally we won't have the $5, $6, $7, $8, $10 billion worth of assets in our government ledger once we'd spent that money, Chewy. Sir, anything else?
These guys have built a castle out of roads of national significance.
Mm.
I can't think of anything that would have a higher return on investment than the North to South Island road and rail link. There just isn't one. But these guys, let's just remember, these guys are still investigating whether to build a 4-kilometre long tunnel underneath Wellington is a viable strategy. And they're paying people thousands of dollars per day to sit on their thumbs and go, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. Maybe we can ask Elon Musk to come in and do a hyper. It's just stupidity that these guys will throw out these huge numbers because big numbers scary.
Yeah.
And not tell us what that could have bought. I have read screeds of information about IREX. There is nothing in there that leaps out at me going, yeah, that doesn't seem like a good spend of money. We are going to do the usual thing that National do. We're going to think small. We're going to think short term, and we're going to think cheap at the expense of everything else.
Yeah.
They do it time and time again. They'll chip away at the capability. They'll chip away at the lifespan. They'll completely ignore return on investment stats. We've seen them do that with roads. They're quite happy to be absolutely blind to piss poor return on investment ratios as long as it's a road that keeps the trucking lobby happy.
Mm. Yeah,
like,
that's a really good
These guys
point.
are holding up the fact that Blue Bridge is privatised. Guess what infrastructure Blue Bridge use? They use the ports of Wellington and the port in Picton. They use public infrastructure that has been built for them to use. If we give away this link to a privatized, a private business, or maybe they'll dress it up and go, oh, we've got a stake in it. It's a public-private partnership.
PPP.
Its whole idea is to extract profit, and it'll go offshore. There's money gone. There are so many companies that swoop in here and extract value from New Zealand because so many people think we can't fucking do it ourselves because we're all small and stupid down here.
Yeah.
And this government are the absolute leaders in their field of small and stupid thinking. Like the gold standard.
Other thing that happened on breakfast this morning, just to play a little bit, and shh, Mr. Luxon's sleeping. Don't wake him up. He's asleep. If we
little wee fella's all tuckered out.
He's all tuckered out. If we stay quiet, maybe he won't wake up at all. As they talked a bit about Farmac as well and what's going on there. And again, Lloyd had a good crack at him about, why did you go to 54? Was it because one of your cancer drugs was at number 54? And Luxon went, yeah, basically. So it just said, yeah, basically. But then the question we all wanted him to confirm, of course, was how are you paying for it? Ready for this? All together, kids. 3, 2, 1. Wakey, wakey, Mr. Luxon.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've got provisions against budget 2025. We've got contingencies to manage through the course of this year. And obviously, we've got an ongoing program of saving.
Provisions against budget 2025, Chewy. means money out of next year's budget.
We're pre-smashing the piggy bank.
As we talked about at the budget, that program doesn't stop. In fact, it just carries on, because every day we want to make sure that we're doing more and more effective things with the taxpayers' money.
And so we want to do more and more effective things with the taxpayers' money, even the taxpayers' money we don't have yet. In business, there's this philosophy of spending yesterday's money, yeah? It says you don't want to spend tomorrow's money, which is what you've invoiced your customers to pay. You don't want to spend today's money, which has just come in from those customers on a check or whatever. You want to spend yesterday's money, which is the money in the bank. This is supposed to be the party of business using terrible business models, not only spending tomorrow's money, but spending tomorrow's money they haven't invoiced anyone for yet. So they don't actually know how much tomorrow's money is going to be, and they're already spending it. And yes, I know some people are going to go, debt and the future and our children. If they had have borrowed for this, we would know. They're not borrowing for this. They're saying we're going to see how much comes in next year, and we're just going to take a chunk, 600 million, a chunk out of that budget. So therefore, some things next year are either going to be missed out on, or Chewy, they'll borrow again next year. No, it'll all be costed. Hang on, if you didn't give that $600 million to last year's funding, would you be borrowing? Oh, it's all costed. We're not borrowing for tax cuts. We're not borrowing for this. We're not borrowing. No, that's what's going to happen. They're spending tomorrow's unknown money. It's even worse than spending tomorrow's money. It's tomorrow's unknown money. Party of business, my ass.
These guys have never returned us to surplus, have they? National.
I don't know if I'd say never, but certainly Labor has a much better track record of it over the past 30 years.
Yeah. Just putting it out there. They're like National's reputation of business and money is unearned.
Yeah.
We talked. I saw him mentioned in the chat, so he's been summoned again. New Zealand's last socialist prime minister, Rob Muldoon. That was the last time New Zealand thought big, or maybe it wasn't. No,
think big.
But infrastructure, it certainly was. I mean, it almost bankrupted the country, but we were still using. Well, we're still using a lot of that infrastructure that was built during Think Big. So, I mean, this is the thing. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? Something I stumbled on while I was looking at the IREX sort of stuff is because the government is really trying to position this as a project that was poorly managed, that people couldn't stay on top of the costs and all of this sort of stuff. And I mentioned there's screeds and screeds of reports that had been generated at what was examined. I found a bit, and I think it just speaks to it. The ships have performed, they're talking about our current ferries. The ships we have now performed well, but they're getting towards the end of their life in New Zealand. So Kiwi Rail started looking at a 5-year design and replacement plan. We need to introduce the latest technologies, infrastructure, and all of the smarts that we can see in the European ferry industry today. The procurement to replace the existing 3-ship fleet is well underway, and the new vessels will enter service in 2024. Now, this statement was made in the before times in 2019, so you can see here why it's taken a little bit longer. Kiwi Rail is getting great emphasis on the design of the ships to ensure high levels of reliability and allow for a 1-hour turnaround time during peak periods. With passenger levels expected to reach 1.7 million movements per year by 2025, it is clear that Kiwi Rail's new ships will need to be bigger. The 2 new train ferries will be able to transport 1,100 more passengers per day than the 3 currently crossing Cook Strait.
Wow.
They will need to accommodate 40 rail wagons, about 3,000 lane meters for vehicles, and room for about 1,800 passengers each. The new build project, known as the Inter-Islander Resilient Connection Project, IREX, will also see port services upgraded to align with the design of the new ferries. We are working with the port companies in Wellington and Pixton on designs and delivery pathways. That was 2019.
Yeah.
So when these guys say we're making it a brave, just so brave, tough decision to cancel it, they are flushing almost a decade of work down the toilet and saying, look at us being good, brave financial managers, sunk cost fallacy, bullshit. They're saying there's nothing of value in that report. The thing that they're saying about the smaller ferries is listed pages and pages and pages deep of alternative options ranked by how good a decision that is. I think that page is in the 30s before they get to the smaller ships, smaller secondhand ships part of it.
Yeah.
This is going to be a clusterfuck that we will look back and point at Nicola Willis and Christopher Luxon for decades.
Yep. It's like,
and realize that they're economic vandals.
It's like when you, it's not the same thing, but it's like when you are, let's say, renovating a house. If it's a house you're living in for the next 10 years, you can't really overcapitalize because you earn the investment back over years. If it's a house you want to flip, then yeah, you got to be careful with what you're going to spend. You can't really overcapitalize on your own house if you're not planning on going anywhere. What they've done is they've basically taken the flip model. They want to get as cheap and as easy as possible, so it's the fewest amount out of, and look, I guess the bad parallel, maybe they will flip it. In other words, make it privatized, but they're making, as you've been saying, the short-term plan, the flip plan, the idea of as quick and as easy as possible, as opposed to thinking about getting that investment back over a longer period of time, serving everyone better over the longer period. And it's just frustrating, man.
Couple of things I want to mention because I see a few comments in the chat about it and that sort of thing. John Oliver has recently done a show about austerity, and that is well worth a look. Because essentially this is what we're talking about. They want austerity for us and the fucking money tap on for everybody else.
Well, that's the same. It's the same ideology as you privatize profits and socialize losses. It's that kind of world.
And it's exactly what the Conservatives over in the UK have been, people have got rich out of their austerity.
Yeah.
I've also got a comment here from Rangi. Government laid off 100,000 workers during Rogernomics and euthanasia, and that's how they got to their surplus in 1994. So that's the only way that National have ever got to surplus, by reaping their way through the workforce.
Yeah, it's like saying, oh, look, my bank balance is looking good at the moment. I haven't spent money on food or rent for 10 months, but bank balance is looking really good. I think you said euthanasia there, which I thought was kind of amusing, actually, instead of euthanasia. So well done. There's another one here that says, not a thing we want to do, but cop out Luxon, but the coalition, I despise this feckless shell of an egg, from Mr. Overs. Thank you for the
chat. Is Luxon a leader? No, he's a middle manager.
Yeah. Peter says, infrastructure investment in a recession, righties don't like that, doesn't screw over workers enough. Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for your super chat. And one from Daniel, let's privatise a vital transport link between two islands. That way, when the company goes under or the shareholders skip the country, then we will have no ferry, full stop. The other thing is what they'll do typically in a privatisation situation is they'll sign some kind of contract that'll be for the next 10 years. And the government will go, well, look, we've got price controls for the next 10 years. And you go, yeah, 10 years in one day, all the prices to cross then double. Because that's how they make their money back. See, a privatisation business will look long term. They'll look for the back end. This government's not.
Yeah, and look, we don't even have to look very far afield to see what exactly would have happened. Last time they sold New Zealand Rail to Toll extracted every penny of it, value it could out of it, and they ran that network into the ground and then had to offload it to us again. We had to buy it back. So let's fucking learn that lesson. You don't sell the country's silverware. It's not like, we don't really need ferries. We fucking need them. So let's 100%. Not put that in the hands of an offshore country, a company, or
you can say offshore cunt. You can say that as well. That still works.
or a private entity that is just there to make profit when it is vital infrastructure. I love when they say that the ferries are loss generating. They provide billions of dollars worth of value to the economy because things travel between the islands.
That's the service. So are libraries. Libraries are loss generating. We can get rid of them as well. That's the difference between a service and a good sometimes, especially if it's a public service. Yeah, public services don't generally return a profit because they're services for the public that the government provides. Those police officers, it's a loss generating service, Chewy. How can we fix that one up? Fire department? Man, Another super chat here from B Broadfoot. We can do it, Chewy. Reserve Bank of New Zealand magics up $8 billion like last year and use that on infrastructure spend like ferries, RONS. NW can't win a seat in Wellington, by the way. Lots of acronyms in there that
RONS is Roads of National Significance.
NW can't win a seat. National Wankers.
Nicola Willis.
Look at you. Just like I bought one. Hey, this conversation is going to go on, I feel, for days. So I think for tonight we can leave it there and go on to a couple of other things as well to wrap up the show. Coalition cracks forming as New Zealand First invokes agree to disagree provision over COVID-19 inquiry. Maybe not. Let me just read a bit of this for you from News. Oh, was it News Hub? I thought it was originally the Herald. Maybe the Herald did the News Hub one. New Zealand First supports the second phase of the inquiry, but its issue lies with the first phase, which was set up by the previous Labour government. So, of course, just because they set it up, that's enough.
Ooh, we don't like it. Yuck.
The first phase looks at the health and economic response to the pandemic in New Zealand and what could be learned from it to improve future pandemic responses. It was criticised by the right bloc for being too narrow, and both of National's coalition agreements with ACT and New Zealand First include a broader inquiry into the COVID-19 response. In other words, Winston Peters trying to pay his friends for voting for him. We believe that Phase 1 of the Royal Commission is simply a continuation of the current inquiry, which is far too narrow in scope and remains compromised by the current chair's direct involvement with the previous government's administration and direct planning of the COVID pandemic response. New Zealand First said on Tuesday. How much does it sound like Trump? Well, because the last, ex-public servant was under Biden, we're going to get rid of him. New Zealand First believes the public perception of bias in the current chair represents a reputational risk for Phase 1 of the inquiry and wants an independent report. New Zealand First campaigned on the fact that the current Royal Commission was nothing more than a Labour Party political tool being used to craft a message through its lack of scope and lack of suitability of the commissioners, the party said. New Zealand must have an independent and robust lessons learned report that can be used for any future pandemic response for our country. And the Herald has given us a few conversations around this. And of course, Brooke Van Velden's like, everything's fine. We basically all agree. Everything's fine. Flowers and roses.
We have met an agreement. All three political parties have their coalition agreements met. We just have one serious tiny little bit where we have disagreed and we agree to disagree. That's no surprise to anybody.
Okay.
Well, we have never supported the present inquiry.
Just in case you've missed it, do you get the vibe of the different tone between Van Velden and Peters? Just a slightly tiny little difference in tone. Just a little tiny one.
For those who are making the inquiry, we said so in a speech in the campaign in Whangarei, and we said so in our manifesto, and we said so, and it's in the coalition deal. So we're saying those that want that can have that, but we agree to disagree, and we want the inquiry that we set out and promised the people to do and have, and it'll be underway at mid-October 2024. Well, we inherited this thing that was never going to work. It was designed to cover the Labour Party's backside, to cover their incompetence and to cover the gross waste of the COVID lockdown months. In the second case, 4 long months. We all know now the $10 billion cost that was added on over and over again to what they did. And we want an inquiry to set the score right that the public can have confidence in. And that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, we're actually really comfortable. ACT campaigns on consulting the public, widening the terms of reference and continuing the inquiry. That's what we're doing, but we're also delivering a wider, more open inquiry that satisfies New Zealand First in Phase 2 of the inquiry. They've said that they agree to disagree with Phase 1. That's absolutely fine. I don't agree with it either. That's why we're making changes.
Look, we've got really clear agree to disagree provisions. It's important in a coalition government.
All four of them.
I think what you're seeing is a mature, responsible, well-functioning coalition government. We don't agree on everything. We have clear processes for when we don't. We're united on Phase 2, which is important for a broader ranging inquiry. But yeah, that's been invoked, and that's perfectly fine.
The opposition will argue that this is cracks in the coalition. Is this something you push back on?
I'd just say to you, what you're seeing is a very mature, well-functioning coalition government in an MMP environment.
Except what will happen is Winston Peters is the one who's a bit pissy about it, and maybe this one will get passed, and then there'll be another agree to disagree, and then there'll be another agree to disagree, and then there'll be an implosion. I believe it's true to say, people in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong, that anytime Winston's been in coalition, he's never seen out the full 3 years. I think that's accurate. Now, it might have been a couple of times where he moved to Supply and Confidence but moved out of the coalition, but I don't think he's ever seen out a full term in a coalition partnership. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that's the case. So that's is it cracks in the coalition? No, I don't think it's cracks in the coalition. Is it Winston getting a bit pissy? Yep. Remember Winston is vindictive and he wants to run the show. And if he has to be the one always disagreeing and then disagreeing and then disagreeing, it could lead to something. So cracks, probably not. Maybe it's one step before cracks in the coalition, Chewy.
Cracks in Winston Peters' face because he's made out of fucking marble from the Greeks because he's so old. There we go. We got there.
You got there.
Yeah, we got there in the end. Yeah, look, there needs to be an inquiry into the COVID response. I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Well, there is.
I don't think there's a disagreement for a need for an inquiry, though.
Yeah.
With it being such an important event, and such a big, country-changing global thing. You look at things, you learn lessons from it, and that sort of thing. When these cookers get their fucking fingers in it, though, because we want to talk to the public, we want to talk to some of the most cracked members of the public that have really bent our society out of shape. We definitely want to hear from those. We want to motivate the most militant, mental portions of our voting base to give feedback into this.
Yeah.
It's nobody can be politically agnostic with this. They all want to get their little fiefdoms involved, despite its importance.
Q Bird says cracks in the coalition, or is the coalition on crack? You decide. Kiwi Bird, thank you for the super chat. Gold says consulting the public? ? Seymour would die if he told the truth. He really is the worst human. I feel like we haven't had that so much the last few days, but that's good from a Citizen Gold. Thank you, sir.
Comes in waves.
We just get reminded how horrible he is every now and again, and then people say it. I do get the sense sometimes, I wonder why he doesn't want to come on the show anymore, Chewy. I'm not entirely sure about why he doesn't want to come on, but yeah, he always seems to be busy.
Because he's scared.
I reckon we've got time for one more story. And do you think we should ask the chat what they want, or do you want to make the decision? Because there's two options.
Oh, you got to get that engagement. Got to get that buy-in.
All right. So we'll look at the first best of 7. So the first best of 9. So the first 5 responses. Either the... Okay, so you guys have got to pick this. Chewy, you keep an eye on the chat. It's
okay.
the first of 5, so it's the best of 9. Would you like us to finish up on one of them? I know you're going to want to get. So let me say the second one first, because the second one's quite important. The first one I feel like people will go for. Certain Hamilton Mayor disability group appalled by the council unleashed foul mouth email. Option number 1. Don't do anything yet. Option number 1. Option number 2. Julian Assange getting released. Pretty massive, big, important story. And I know, I'm not sure which way to go. So it's either Hamilton Mayor or something like that, Hamilton or Assange.
Put it in the chat, 1 or 2.
Yeah,
1 or
Hamilton,
2.
And you guys are deciding, and then we have no responsibility. You're counting up, Chewy?
So far.
Oh, God. 12. Someone says, Kiwi says 12, 21.
Oh, we forgot that our chat clearly can't count.
Oh my gosh, it's too fast. 1 + 2 = 3. 1, 1, 1, 1. Oh gosh.
I'm going to say the vibe of this is 1.
I think what we're might end up doing, let's do them both, but we'll do them pretty quick. How about that?
Yeah.
Everyone happy with that?
I'm shutting up so we can do it quicker.
Here we go.
It was an email Hamilton Mayor Paula Southgate says she hasn't seen the likes of before.
I was shocked and disgusted, actually. My mouth just fell open.
Hamilton City Councillor Andrew Bidder, seen here at a council meeting, had written to neighbouring Waipa district.
Seen here, slouching.
Sleeping.
Asleep.
Can I also say, just to put a little bit of framing on this guy, some of you might be familiar with something else that he hit the news for, was he's one of these guys that threatened public executions for councillors.
Yeah, charming man.
He is the cookeriest of cookies.
Yeah, he's a cookie. He's the cookie monster.
Yep.
Absolute
Council, brainworms.
Using not only the F and C words, but also two that are hurtful to the disabled community.
So, Chewy, we don't need to say it right now, but I saw a lot of people tweeting out today, what is the S word? Because some newspapers said S star C.
Yeah.
I know what it is. You know what it is.
It's the fact that the disabled community are upset by that.
But actually, to be honest, I had to go, what's it? And like when people say the F word now, there's like a couple of offensive F words. You're like, which one are you talking about? Like, is it the LGBT slur? Is it the fornication slur? Which is it? All these slurs, not enough time. We'll keep going. Where did that come from?
I think that.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got confused there for a second. All right, we'll go back to it.
But also two that are hurtful to the disabled community.
Sorry, obviously I haven't pre-watched this and I wasn't sure where that noise was coming from.
Here, language such as basic and retard, it believes that those old stereotypes of disabled people as being inferior. So it really disappoints me and the disabled community when we hear those terms used out of context in quite derogatory and demeaning ways.
Amid the backlash,
that was interesting. That the community no longer hears those words very much out of context. Yep. It's interesting. So it really are words of yesteryear that they don't hear, that the disabled community doesn't really hear them very much anymore.
Andrew Bidder is offering a partial apology, yet still using the offensive words.
That is insulting to spastic and retarded people. I'm sorry about that.
But he says he's not sorry for the rest of his expletive-laden email, in which he also told Waipa Mayor Susan O'Regan, get off your fat ass.
I'd rather not do it this way. But it is effective because it can't be ignored.
Is it?
Bidder is angry with the way...
But is it though? Yeah.
Waipa District Council handled consultation for a new bridge in Cambridge, where he lives, and says he made the comments...
Oh, where he lives.
Mm.
So it's about an issue where he lives.
Yeah. So
not where he
his
works as a councillor. So it's personal.
So he's an elected councillor for a council that's out of the area where he lives. So he's writing that in not as a councillor, but as a ratepayer.
Yeah.
This is the thing, and that
on
means
some
that
level,
he's basically getting off scot-free because it's not like he's having a go at his own council.
Mm.
He is just writing in as a ratepayer and going off and thinking it's effective, which I think is something that you only really see out of a certain demographic and a certain age group.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a certain demographic and a certain age group that we keep on putting on fucking local councils.
Yeah, there's an interesting dynamic here, but it's a little bit like, you know, this is a big leap I'm about to make, but if it wasn't Biden's son, would he be getting charged in that case? And if it wasn't Donald Trump, would he be getting charged in some of in the case about business things? The surname does something. If he wasn't a councillor elsewhere, would this be a news story? Probably not. Because if it was just a ratepayer, but I guess if it was an All Black, it would also be getting exposure, not because of what he does, but because of the profile he has outside.
I think if it was me writing into my council that way, my email would get fucking destroyed, and I'd probably get blocked. So for him saying that it's effective, it's just ridiculous. Now this is just one of a cluster of like-minded councillors. We've got one here in Dunedin, Lee Vandervis. We've got a mayor in Invercargill who definitely fits into this little fucking box, doesn't he? A Nobby. We keep electing these guys. They're all older white guys that don't think that they need to stick to any sort of decorum or way of doing things, and they think they're just shaking it up by being just obnoxious cunts.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's get into this.
As a private citizen, Hamilton's mayor has laid a code of conduct complaint against him, but doesn't have the power to remove him.
I wish I was able to have that option to make him stand down, but I don't. He was democratically elected by the wider public, and so unless they decide he has to go, he doesn't have to go.
Hamiltonians will be able to give their verdict in the local body elections next year. Yana Katurala, News Hub.
Well, we're going to move quite quickly into the second story. But before we do that, Chewie, do you have anything else you want to add to that quickly?
Just really quickly, we mentioned this when we covered some of the local body elections, but this is a really clear sign of what happens when only a certain demographic votes in local body elections. Because people don't think that they're important. They get these dusty old cunts from ratepayers groups that just fuck everything up. And if you're politically motivated for the national level politics, then you can be politically active for the local body stuff as well. It's important too.
And it's particularly bad at the moment after the COVID lockdowns and the protest at Wellington. It's elevated, and the voices for fuckwits, those people who are getting some of their people to get into these campaigns. So it's particularly bad at the minute as well. Will it start to travel out? I mean, to be honest with you, I know we're not a subset of America, but when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. And if Trump gets back in, you won't see an end of this. You might see an increase to this kind of candidate over the next cycle or so. But we'll see. All right.
And it basically goes one of two ways. People will feel disconnected from it and just not engage with it again. Or people will see the danger that there is, and as Gary calls it, a knobocracy. And they'll push back against it. And it's that pushback that we should do.
Probably one of the biggest news stories in the world today was the release of Julian Assange. Of course, he was in, was it the Chilean diplomatic building, whatever that's called, embassy, for several years. And then he was in prison for about the past 3 or 4 years. He's kind of been given a pardon, so to speak. It sounds like that they've done a deal with the American government, so he leave and not quite go back home. That's why I put free-ish in the thing. Ecuadorian, thank you very much. He's free-ish, but he's out of jail, which I guess is the main thing he wanted.
It was an extraordinary breakthrough, and one Julian Assange feared may never happen. Released from jail and boarding a flight to his freedom.
Good morning. Straight to breaking news.
The U.S. government has entered into a plea deal.
A development Assange's family had been prepared for days ago.
If you're seeing this, it means he is out.
Things are moving very quickly. If everything goes well, Julian will be on a plane on the way to freedom.
Freedom to be signed off by a judge on the US island of Saipan, north of Guam. There, his long-running legal saga will finally end with a plea deal made by Biden's administration.
I do think it's the right call, and don't get me wrong. I think Julian Assange did the wrong thing. Julian Assange hurt the United States government.
For years, America has been...
Did he do the wrong thing by exposing stuff? He did the wrong thing? Maybe the Americans shouldn't have done the wrong thing and he wouldn't have exposed. That's an interesting perspective, that because Julian Assange told the world through Wikipedia some of the horrific things that the American military had done and was doing, he did the wrong thing. I mean, I think the story talks a bit about what actually he released at the start. We'll have a look.
In trying to extradite Assange, accusing him of espionage for his role in publishing secret war logs and details of civilian killings in Afghanistan. He spent 7 years in political asylum living inside London's Ecuador embassy, dragged kicking and screaming when he was evicted in 2019, fighting his extradition in a UK prison ever since. His last bid for freedom came when Australian politicians recently travelled to Washington, asking America to call off its pursuit of Assange.
So we just got to be still cautious on how this proceeds, because the end has not arrived.
It's Barnaby Joyce. G'day, Barnaby. Hi, mate. Fair crack of the whip, Nige.
Arrived. We're in the process.
Now 52, his freedom is closer than ever.
Person you should give a big hug to is his brother, Gabriel, and then to his dad. I just always used to feel for them because these people were relentless in their prosecution of this issue.
One that could soon be over in a matter of hours.
There you go. There's the main story anyway. So it's a massive story, actually. And like, it's really interesting to see that he's still on somewhat the crim, the offender. You know, Julian Assange did the wrong thing when he was just a whistleblower exposing, let's say, war crimes committed by America. Chewy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What he did with WikiLeaks, just, you know, that was America's dirty laundry. They don't want that out there. And yeah, sure, you could say it's espionage, but really, you know, oh, you did damage to the US. No, dude, that was your own guys going off the chain. If the information exists, then yeah, I think they have to look at this from a point of view that he has served his time. This has been going on since Gulf War II. That's, you know, in Afghanistan, it's decades that this man has essentially been in a lockdown and in prison, as mentioned in that story. Just put it to bed. Just let it go.
And what's really the difference between what he did and what a journalist would do? You know, did he? I mean, when I'm saying did he, because I can't really remember all the details, did he actively break in and get these things? That would be espionage. If he was funneled these things by an insider, how's that any different from a journalist?
Which he was.
Yeah. So how's that any different from a journalist?
It's basically a journalism thing, but because he wasn't, you know, set up his own website and stuff like that. Yeah, it's strange. He didn't have the protection of being part of the press.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything in the chat you want to get to before we head off?
Not so much in the chat.
Great show tonight, by the way, Fano. You did very well.
Praise from the
I just thought I'd let people know that it was a great show. They did very well. They all did very well.
Not so much from the chat, but I am going to use my prerogative to squeak a little sneaky story in at the end.
Oh, okay. I've been watching this.
Yeah, Upper Hutt Drag King Storytime cancelled after threats and opposition from Destiny Church. Very, very violent threats directed at council staff and library staff. So once again, Destiny Church just being our own little domestic terrorism, religious fundamentalist group.
Have a look at the Twitter feed. Have a look at Brian Tamaki's Twitter feed. That's where I've seen it. He's been like, yep, that's another scalp for us. He's literally like, yep, that's another one down for us. That's what he's literally using that kind of terminology.
Yeah. So this is a thing that I think really needs to be looked at is the getting away with it with absolutely zero consequences. And if Brian's talking about that way, he's found his weapons. It's pushing back against a vulnerable group. It is absolutely terrorizing public servants and local councils, librarians, and that sort of thing, and just making it unsafe for the performers that are giving up their time to do something cool for kids, and putting the kids at risk as well. It needs to be stopped.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm going to leave you on.
Well, I'll just show people so they know what the story is. Breaking news: we've got another head on our platter. And that's it. I'd like to actually speak to Willie Smackintosh because the way that Brian told the story on his Twitter feed was that because there's like, you can have adult entertainers have an adult show and then have a family-friendly show. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know the details of what these were doing. This is the photo that Brian Tamaki put up about.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, they use that from an adult venue.
That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
Not going to be doing that in the library.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'd like to know what the library one is. I mean, you know, one of the best ones is, you know, Evanescence, Bring Me to Life, that song. She now does children's music. That's what the lead singer Evanescence is doing now. It's a different audience, different market, and then she sometimes still performs with Evanescence. So to me, it's not so much about the person, it's about what they're doing. And of course, as you're saying, no one's going to be bare-chested at a library doing that kind of gig. So that's where we often talk about the framing. That's where the framing of this reaches lunacy, because obviously that's not going to be seen like that in a library.
And of course, let's just not ignore what they want to put away in the corner there, that one of their own was abusing children.
Yeah, he's running away from that a lot.
Always projection.
There's always, and there's more and more and more photos coming out from people all over the place saying, really, Brian, how are you saying you don't know this person? Photo with him beside him, arm around him, all this kind of stuff. It's, yeah.
Sort out your own fucking house, Brian.
Yep, I agree.
The other one about adult performers, one of my absolute favourite, the main guy from Slipknot, whose name escapes, Corey Taylor, I think maybe, main guy from Slipknot, in his solo show, he does sometimes the SpongeBob SquarePants song, and people go absolutely fucking off the chain for it. It's awesome.
All right, team. It's been a good one tonight. Really enjoyed it. Glad you've been with us.
And pick up the news.
Who got the news?
Big hairy style.
It's the only style. Solos.
New Zealand, where the politics play. They bring the truth every single day.
Dab.
Talking about the mess.
Dab. You're so 2000 and late. Dabbing.
Hey, I got that Riz.
With a mic in their hand, no time for cheese, just facts straight up. Bad and chewing, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and chew, they'll make the right choice.
Okay, whānau, up on YouTube tomorrow morning, first thing will be that conversation with the Welsh Language Commissioner. If you want to share it around, that's on the YouTube channel. Already be some clips put up on Twitter and stuff as well. And other than that, we'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Really appreciate you all. Appreciate you, Chewy. And if you'd like to support what we're doing, if you've enjoyed tonight's show and you think you'd like to get behind us, patreon.com/Big Hairy News, and you could be in these credits in just a few days' time when I look at it again and add some more names. Thanks very much, Chewy.
Cheers, fam.
All right, team. See you later. See you.